Yo guys, what's going on for the Real Sports Talk and MLB Baseball Blogs? I'm Tim, he's Justin. Day 4, the first 3 days we did the Astros, the Twins, and the Mariners. Day 4 is the Baltimore Orioles, who have rebranded this offseason. They've gone back to the old cereal box looking bird, who looks like he should be on a Cocoa Puffs box if you ask me, but I do kind of like it. But regardless of that, last year the Orioles won 69-93. Buck Showalter comes back for, I believe, his second full season as the manager. In the offseason, Justin, they made some minor moves. Can you go over some of the moves they made for us?
Looking at their minor moves, it looked like it was pitching. This was a team that had struggling pitching last year in their bullpen and also in the starting rotation. Most of their pitchers in the starting rotation that were on opening day roster of last year, they all went down in the minor leagues, except like maybe 2 of them. But when you look at this pitching, this bullpen, and also the pitching rotation, when they got these new key accusations, they got Luis Ayala, who was just the latest signing. Jason Hamill, they got in the trade for, I think it was Jeremy Guthrie. Matt Lindstrom is coming over. Darren O'Day coming over from the Texas Rangers, going over to some spring training non-roster invitees, which are going to be most likely minor league contracts. Armando Galarraga did not have a good time down there in Arizona. I've seen him maybe pitch once when he was over here in Arizona. Pat Neshek coming over from the San Diego Padres. Other than that, they got Nick Johnson, who plays the infield, the first baseman. I think he played last year in Cleveland. Going to their major league, they got Andy Chavez, who plays outfield, who could possibly be backing up Adam Jones.
Yeah, I mean, the Andy Chavez thing, he's a nice late, in the 8th or 9th inning, he's the type that you'll put in there because he can make some incredible plays in the field. We've seen it. I think everyone remembers the play in the 06 NLCS where he robbed the home run and sent it to a Game 7. Obviously, the Mets didn't win it, but he made an incredible play on that regardless. Now, the Nick Johnson move I kind of like because Chris Davis had a lot of trouble staying healthy last year, and if he has trouble staying healthy this year, and they really do not necessarily have a steady DH right now, considering they let Vlad Guerrero go. Nick Johnson, to me, if he can stay healthy, which has always been a problem in his career, could make an impact for this team this year. So let's start in their lineup. At catcher, you have Matt Wieters, a guy who came up, was a prize prospect, and kind of disappointed the first 2 years before last year showed why he can be what he can be. He's a solid fielder, and last year he had 262, 22 home runs and 68 RBIs. You'd like the average to be a little higher. When he first came up, his first season in 100 games, he had 288 with 9 home runs, and then his second year he had 249, which was really disappointing. I think if he can get the average up, hit closer to like 27 home runs, Matt Wieters in a few years I think will be one of the best catchers in baseball.
Absolutely, man. Matt Wieters, this guy can hit for power, this guy can hit for average, and this guy is the face of the, well, I have to say, like, he's going to be the face of the franchise here within a few years. I don't really see, I want to see Nick Markakis and Brian Roberts think in their heads right now, I want to go to a team that can contend for the World Series and also for the playoffs. I don't see Nick Markakis and Brian Roberts really sticking with this team once their contracts expire, because I understand these guys have been on this Orioles team that has not had a winning season for a long time, and when you look at it, you got Matt Wieters, who was there with Jones in center field. I think Matt Wieters could be the face of the franchise once Brian Roberts and Nick Markakis are gone.
And backing him up, you have Taylor Teagarden, who last year hit 235. That was only in 14 games with the Rangers, so I mean that really tells you about nothing. He's an alright backup, not necessarily someone you want to see getting a lot of action if your team is going to contend. At first base, they have Chris Davis, who was traded there mid-year last year, I believe, in the Koji Uehara deal. In 59 games there last year, in 199 at-bats, he hit 266 with 5 home runs. And really, he was a prospect that the Rangers had pretty big expectations for. We saw some of them in the playoffs a few years ago, but Mitch Moreland really stepped up as a guy that they anticipated to be their long-term first baseman there, and I think that Chris Davis became expendable, and the Orioles got a real nice deal for him. I think that this is a guy who can bat 275, maybe give you 20 home runs this season. I don't know. We haven't seen a ton of them. He had 21 home runs in 2009 in only 113 games. So I think that he could probably do better than 20 home runs. But 20 home runs is where I'm going to set the bar for this guy in 2012.
Now, I don't know much about Chris Davis right here. I didn't really follow. I think didn't he spend last year with Texas, right? You said, right?
You see, I spent till the trade deadline with Texas. Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about Chris Davis, but what you said about it, he looks like this guy does have somewhat power in him. He did play 59 games last year. I think when you look at this season, I think Chris Davis, if he's going to be the starting everyday first baseman for the Baltimore Orioles, that this team has really got to give him a shot, and I can really see him hitting, I think, about 20 home runs this year.
And right now, Mark Reynolds is listed as a backup at first base, but that's probably why they signed Nick Johnson, and he will ultimately end up getting some time at first base. I would expect Chris Davis to play 120, 130 games at first base this year. Over at second base, you have Brian Roberts, a guy who's probably, I believe he's the longest tenured Oriole at this point. Last season, the last 2 seasons really, he's had a lot of trouble staying healthy, and last year, even when he was healthy for 40 games, he batted .221 with 3 home runs. This is a guy who, before we were used to seeing him hit in the 280s, 290s area, high 280s, low 290s, and giving you 10 to 15 home runs. And he was really one of the more solid all-around second basemen in the league. Really had a career year in 2009 when he hit for 16 home runs and 79 RBIs. But since then, he's really had a lot of trouble staying healthy. We've heard his name in some trade rumors, and he is getting up there in age, so that makes sense. He's 87, 97. He would be about 34 now, somewhere in that area. So I would anticipate, if the Orioles are not a contender, that this guy will probably be traded to a contender somewhere in like the NL West, one of those type of teams.
Yeah, in the NL West, if I am to trade Brian Roberts, I'm going to have to go back to the team that had a lot of rumors around him. That's the San Diego Padres. They do have some minor league prospects that they could trade up for Brian Roberts, who's getting up there at age. But I do agree with them trying to probably get some new blood into this organization. I mean, they got some old guys, J.J. Hardy, Brian Roberts, obviously. I mean, this team really has got to start getting a little bit young. I mean, Jones in outfield, he's young. Reimold is young. I mean, just start getting some prospects in the organization, start building for the future.
At shortstop, you're going to have, well, let me mention this first. Robert Andino will be the backup at both second and short. We've seen him with the Marlins at the beginning of his career. In the last 3 years, he has spent in Baltimore. He's a pretty solid piece off the bench. He can hit 5 to 7 home runs, give you 30, 40 RBIs, and last year he was even playing 139 games for this team because of injuries to Brian Roberts. He had .263, 5 home runs, and 36 RBIs. That's probably not what you want as a starter, but off the bench, he's a nice piece to have and a solid utility man. Now at shortstop, as we said, Andino will back up J.J. Hardy, who had a very nice season last year. He hit .269 with 30 home runs and 80 RBIs. Was one of the people that they talked about for winning comeback player of the year after a few down years with the Brewers. He's hit over 25 home runs 2 other times in his career, and in an Orioles lineup that really can hit for a lot of power. I would anticipate him being between 25 and 30 home runs again this season and close to 80 RBIs.
Dude, J.J. Hardy, great year last year. I think J.J. Hardy should have won the comeback player of the year because this guy really just the past couple of years with Milwaukee just really did not connect the dots. But when he came over to Baltimore, this guy just went straight to work. In 129 games, this guy hit 30 home runs, 80 RBIs. I think this year he's probably in maybe the top 15 shortstops in the league right now. Watching over at MLB Network, they said he had him at number 10. That seems pretty right, but at my list, I'll probably put him at number 12.
For third base, you have Mark Reynolds, who will be backed up by Chris Davis. There's, Antonelli, Bell, Robert Andino, a bunch of guys that could really be the backups at third base. Chris Davis is not really likely because he's going to be holding down first base. So Mark Reynolds will get a lot of the first base time. And when you talk about the guys that strike out the most in MLB, the names that usually come to your mind first are Adam Dunn and Ryan Howard. But the guy who actually owns the record for most strikeouts in 2009, he smashed. I think Dunn was at 199, Howard was at 200, and then In the same season that he hit 44 home runs, Mark Reynolds also struck out 223 times. That's going to come with great power hitters, but it cannot come as frequently as it does, which is why he hits for such a low average. I mean, in 2010, how many guys hit over 32 or hit over 30 home runs, hit over 80 RBIs, and bat 198? He's so inconsistent because Adam Dunn, for the most part in his career, you can at least get him his average in the 240s or 250s. Obviously, last year he had an awful year. Ryan Howard, he's been all over the place throughout his career, even hit 300 one year. But for the most part, he's a 260 hitter. It's tough to really, even with how much power he has, to really say that he can be a piece on a contender when he's batting 220, 198. You got to get him close to 2009 where he hit 260, and hopefully he doesn't strike out 223 times again, because you can take a little less home runs. If he can hit 30 home runs and bat 260, I think that you'll take that. This is a guy who's going to swing at just about every pitch thrown his way, and he can hit just about any pitch out of the park. Similar to how Vlad Guerrero used to be back in the day. If you throw this guy a high fastball, it's going to be in the stands.
Yeah, I would like to say I apologize for this dog barking, but Mark Reynolds, this guy is a solid, maybe, what would you say, to maybe 5 or 6 hit
well,
lineup?
I mean, technically the type of power he has, he would be a 4-hitter, but because he is so inconsistent, it's tough to put him there. So
yeah,
I guess I'd put him at 5.
When you look at it, Mark Reynolds he always starts off the season great. He always has a nice average hitting into maybe into June, and then by then the Orioles are always 14 to 20 games back. I mean, then you start seeing Mark Reynolds start slumping a lot. I mean, he just has that late year slump for this old Baltimore Orioles team. For this team, in order to contend, they really need Mark Reynolds to really bring his A game and have him focused all year. I mean, Mark Reynolds does have the power. This guy was almost near 40 runs this year, and I had this guy getting close to 40, but I think when I'm looking at it, I think this year he's going to have maybe 34 to 36 home runs. I wouldn't say above 36.
But do you take that if Mark Reynolds bats 200 this year?
200, I would, it depends, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why the Orioles probably aren't going to be a contender. I mean, the guy is a masher by the definition. But
also, when you look at the division, it's also stacked with a lot of talent, even with the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees, including the Rays, man. I mean, this Baltimore team just really has got to have all their players come ready to play this year.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why the Orioles, it's going to be a 5-year process with this team, because you mentioned how good the division is. But let's keep going. In left field, then you have Nolan Reimold will be the starter. Andy Chavez, we already touched on, he'll back him up. Nolan Reimold last year, 247 average, 13 home runs and 45 RBIs. That was in 87 games. The problem he's had over his career is just getting a lot of playing time. In 2010, he had 207 with 3 home runs, and then in 2009, he had 279 with 15 home runs. If he can get a full season together, he could probably hit you around 20 home runs, 15 to 20 home runs, and hopefully he can bat around 280. He's a nice outfielder. He's not going to hit the cover off the ball, but he's a good overall player.
Yeah, I was really excited last year. I think it wasn't Nolan Reimold and also Matt Wieters who really sealed the deal for Boston's season last year. Wasn't those his last 2 hitters?
Yeah, they were the last 2 hitters, yeah.
I mean, it was just Nolan Reimold is a really great outfielder. He's young. This guy, I have a lot of hype from him. He only played 87 games last year. I can possibly see him hitting at least 110. I'll probably put it at that. But I think this guy is he can hit about 20 home runs this year. I mean, this guy you really got to watch out for.
You're saying he's going to hit 110 RBIs this year?
Can he hit 110 RBIs? I mean, looking at his 45 RBIs from last year, that also plays a deal on his during his injury timeout. It's possible, but I really see that this guy is going to have a breakout season.
Yeah, I agree with the breakout part. I don't see 110 RBIs. Adam Jones, a guy who a lot of people are saying pretty soon they're going to have to decide either A, we're going to sign you an extension, you're going to be the guy for our team, or B, you're going to have to try and trade this guy because he's been in the league for a while now and you're going to be looking towards free agency. Obviously, he was the huge piece that came over in that Eric Bedard trade that is so infamous over in Seattle. He's still pretty young. He's 26 right now. He'll be 27 later on in the season. Last year he had 280 with 25 home runs and 83 RBIs. He's a decent fielder. He won a Gold Glove, but unfortunately a lot of times Gold Gloves are given out on reputation of how good of a hitter these guys are, and they don't look at how great of a fielder he is. I think he won the Gold Glove in 2009, and I remember seeing Joe Sheen of Baseball Perspectives, I don't think he is now, but he was then, saying that this guy really is not that great a fielder, that the voters just didn't do their homework. But overall, as a hitter, he's not going to be the best piece in your lineup, but he's a pretty solid outfielder. If he can hit, I think that he is a guy we got to look at as he's going to really show what he is this year. He can either continue hitting 20, 25 home runs, batting 280, or he could take that next step, hit you 30 home runs, and become a star. Not a superstar, but a star.
Yeah, Adam Jones, it looks like they're going to re-sign him. I wouldn't say trade him away because he's such a valuable piece to that outfield. He's really dangerous on the base path, and I wouldn't really see why Baltimore would trade him because he's such a valuable piece of that outfield. Now, Adam Jones, he really has got to correct his outfield problems. He had 8 errors, which led the All-American League outfielders last year with 8 errors. He's got to correct it, and this looks like the year that he will correct it. In 151 games, he hit 25 home runs, and yes, he's going to have a repeat of last year. With his hitting, I can see this guy hitting possibly 280 again this year. This guy is just great hitting-wise. And on the base-wise, he's very dangerous on the base path, so you really got to look out for this guy.
And then in right field, also, you will have John Miller backing him up. It is Nick Markakis, one of the few guys who's been there for a long time with the Orioles. And a promising career in 2007, 2008. The guy was hitting over 300. He was hitting 20 home runs. I mean, even in 2009 when he batted 293 with 18 home runs, over 100 RBIs. The thing that he has done the last few years is his average is going down. I mean, 297 in 2010 is fine, but his power numbers have gone down to like 12 home runs and 60 RBIs in 2010. And in 2011, it got even worse, 15 home runs, 73 RBIs. So I shouldn't say it got worse. It improved, but the average got worse is what I meant. And the on-base percentage as well dipped to a level that it hadn't been at in a few years, and he has not gotten the job done the way that they need him to. I would expect that he does get traded at some point this season.
Now, when you're talking about getting traded, Tim, this also revolves around Nick Markakis as well. Now, why would you think Nick Markakis would get traded? I mean, is he getting old? I don't know for sure. I haven't really watched Baltimore.
He's 27 or 28. And he's been in the league for 5 or 6 years, so he should be coming up on free agency pretty soon. So, I mean, I think you could get a decent amount for him in free agency.
Yeah, you would get a decent amount. But I don't know what team will actually like. There's a couple of teams that could be a possibility, but as of right now, I think that he should possibly resign with Baltimore for about a year, maybe 2 years would be at best, and see what he really has. And then maybe if those 2 years, if he does have one decent year, one bad year, bring up the contract negotiations again. If it doesn't work out, find a new home.
Yeah, and I mean, Nick Markakis has really kind of fallen off the last few years. I think he could be a nice piece to a team, but this is a guy that I looked at and said he's one of those type of outfielders that can bat 300, hit 25 home runs. I'm just not sure he is that anymore, and his career is really disappointed me. The lineup, it actually sounds pretty good. You do have some boomer bust type guys with Mark Reynolds, even J.J. Hardy at the plate for a shortstop does not give you a ton of average. But you have a nice lineup overall. Some questions with Chris Davis at first, what he can do, and what Nolan Reimold can do over a full season, and who ultimately is going to be the DH for this team. But I think that the line is pretty solid. Then you get to the pitching staff, and there's some questions. Tommy Hunter, who came over last year in the Koji Ohara trade, mid-season from the Texas Rangers. Went 4-4 last year with a 4.68 ERA and 84 innings pitched. No, my bad. He did not. Did he come over mid-season or during this off-season?
I think it was during mid-season, actually.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
So, I mean, he had a nice run with them in the playoffs. He's young, but I don't see a ton in this guy's future. He had a really nice 2010 season, but other than that, he hasn't shown me. I mean, in 2009, he went 9-6 with a 4.10 ERA. And if you think about this, in the AL West, and I understand that they play more than just the AL West, but playing a majority of your games there, you're talking about playing the Mariners, whose offense is a joke. Let's be honest. The A's, who every time they get a good offensive player, Billy Beane does his Moneyball thing and trades them away. And the Angels, who, I mean, obviously this year with the accusation of Albert Pujols, Mike Trout coming along, a ton of things, their offense is going to be vastly improved. But over the past 3 or 4 years, one of the reasons they haven't continued their success that they had established through the first decade of the 2000s is because their lineup has not been as good. And you know, to have a 4.10 ERA in 2009, and then in 2011 he had a 4.68 ERA in 20 total games. I think that 2010 was kind of a fluke year where he went 13-4 with a 3.73 ERA.
I mean, I'm not too prized on Tommy Hunter as the ace of the squad. I mean, just trading away Jeremy Guthrie, I don't understand why.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I cannot possibly. I mean, I guess it's because
I don't understand what they see in Tommy Hunter that makes them, we're confident on Tommy Hunter. There's only one thing that comes to mind when I see Tommy Hunter. I think that was that year when Texas eliminated the Yankees in the playoffs and where he had that dominating series versus the Yankees. That's the only thing that comes to my mind when it comes to Tommy Hunter.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think the Guthrie thing had to do with the fact that he was going to make a large amount of money in arbitration, and that they just didn't feel like paying that amount of money because they realized he's a good pitcher, but he's not great, and they're not going to contend with him. So why waste the money, I guess is what they're thinking. Just like, why waste the money to bring back Vlad Guerrero when you're probably not going to contend and you already have a lineup of guys that are pretty solid.
Vlad Guerrero wants to come back and just break some records because he's close to so many of them right now.
And then at the number 2 spot, you have everyone's favorite pitcher, Wei-Yin Chen. I think that he came over from Taiwan in the offseason. He's 26 years old, never pitched a pitch in the major leagues, so not exactly sure what to think there. At the number 3 spot, you have Zach Britton, also very young, 25 years old. He showed some flashes last year, but overall 11-11 with a 4.61 ERA. 4.61 is a really bad ERA. I understand that you're pitching in the American League East, but I mean, the way I evaluate pitchers is you have a few types. You have the guys who can keep it between 2 and 250 for the most part. If you can do that consistently, you're an ace. Between 250 and 3, you're a number 2. And between 3 and 350, you're, a number 3 starter, in some cases a number 4. After that, you're usually one of those, when you go from 350 to 4, you're one of those inconsistent. Some years you'll be good enough to be the 4th or 5th starter. If you get above 4, really, I mean, if you consistently do that, you're not a very good major league pitcher. So we have to see what comes of Zach Britton's career. I think he will improve this year, but he needs to.
Yeah, he's really young. He's 24 years old. I think, last year wasn't his first full season in the majors.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was sent down unexpectedly down to the Bowie Bay Sox. This is coming off of Wikipedia, and it really does. It came out of nowhere. He had a nice start to the season, no doubt about it. He goes 5-1, and then he just lost his last 6 of his last 7 decisions. I mean, yes, everybody has those downward spirals, but they really rushed him to the major leagues, and that really took a toll on this kid. This kid is going to be something in the future. You Baltimore Orioles, do not trade this guy, because I guarantee you within the next 3, maybe 4 years, this guy is really going to bring something to the plate. So you just got to keep this guy. And if you keep him, he could be really way in the future. Could be a possible Cy Young with like CC Sabathia and like Cliff Lee.
Well, I don't know if I go that far, but I think he can be a solid number 3 for this team if he figures things out. At the number 4 spot, you got Jake Arrieta, who had a tough season last year, and it's tough to gauge that because in August he went out for the season with an elbow injury. He had bone spurs in his elbow, and they had to do surgery, and it cost him the rest of the season. The season before that, in 18 games, he went 6-6 with a 4.66 ERA, and in 2011 he went 10-8 with a 5.05. I can tell you, I watched some Orioles baseball living on the East Coast, and I have not seen a ton of potential in this guy to make me think he's going to be much in the majors. At the number 5 spot, you have Jason Hamill, a guy who's had some moderate success in the MLB, but has never really done much. Has never had an ERA below 4, and I actually thought that he had done a lot better. He was with the Rays in 2008 when they went to the World Series, but other than that, he's had his lowest career ERA is 4.33. You can give you 170 innings, but when your ERA is at 4.33, 4.81, 4.76, that really doesn't help you because he's not giving you overall a good product out on the field.
He's coming back over from the National League over back to the American League, back to the division where I think he started. He started with Tampa Bay in his career, right?
Yeah.
So he's coming back. So he does have experience in the American League and facing off against the Angels, the Rays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox. It's not going to be too much of a surprise for him because he has experience versus those teams. And I don't really see him in the pitching. Like he looks like maybe a bullpen type of guy, but at the number 5 position, you still have to look at other participants that can also compete for that number 5 role. When you look at the number 5 role, you got to look at Brian Mattis. I mean, Brian Mattis, he had a down year last year, 1-9, a total crappy year, a 10.69 ERA. And let's just think about it. If he's having a bad year, give him one more shot, and if it's just not connecting the dots, then start talking about bringing Jason Hamill in. But as of right now, I don't see Jason Hamill as that number 5 starter.
Alright, let's look over at the bullpen headed by Jim Johnson, a common name obviously there, but he is 27 years old. Jim Johnson coming into the season does not have a ton of experience as a closer except 2009 in 16 opportunities he saved 10, which 10 saves is nice, but blowing 6 is not. And in 2010 he got 6 opportunities, blew 5 of those. And, I mean, the ERA overall, he's been a solid reliever, but when you put him in that closer position, for some guys it just never works out. And last year it didn't work out again. In 14 opportunities, he only saved 9. So, he might just be one of those guys who's not meant to pitch in this role, or he could do what Ryan Madson did last year. I mean, Ryan Madson last year, he's obviously with the Reds now. With the Phillies last year, Madson, on numerous occasions when Brad Lidge had struggled in 2009 mightily, the year he blew 11 saves, and in the years that Madson or Lidge had gotten injured as well, he had some trouble coming in there and getting the job done, and then he would come in the next night in the 8th inning and he'd go 1, 2, 3. For some guys, it's when you put that 9 up on the scoreboard, they just can't get the job done. Maybe the things will finally click this year for Johnson. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Some other notable names, you have Matt Lidstrom in the bullpen. Lidstrom's been a pretty solid pitcher throughout his career. Last year with Colorado, 2-2 in 54 innings, 3 ERA. He's had some nice seasons with Florida, some bad seasons with Florida as well, but he's still relatively young. And then you also have Darren O'Day, who is a nice pickup. And there's obviously some other guys, Bergeson, Simon Phillips.
Bergeson.
Yeah, Bergeson. I'm having a problem speaking. When you talk about a different MLB team for 30 minutes every day, this shit gets tough. But and players start to run together, especially online. In bullpens on teams where they're not as where you don't see as many veterans on, you see a lot of young guys. It's tough, and you kind of forget about these younger guys that come up. But anyway, the final guy that they have in there is Kevin Gregg, who could ultimately end up being a closer. He's been a closer before with the Marlins and the Cubs, and even last year with the Orioles, he got a chance. He saved 22 games, but he blew 7 games. Really, for the closer, if you blow more than like 5 saves in a season, it's a pretty bad year. He's had some nice years, 32 of 36 with the Marlins in 2007. At that point, he looked like a very promising young pitcher, but he also next season went out and blew 11 saves. So, I mean, or 9 saves, my bad. I don't know what ultimately this guy's going to end up being. I think that he's just a set-up man type at this point in his career.
I see Kevin Gregg as a closer as of right now. I mean, Johnson and O'Day could be a possible set-up man, but I think Kevin Gregg's the guy. So let's just put it at that. So that's really, I don't really know much about this Baltimore Orioles bullpen. I don't really watch them. So going on to some rapid fire now. So let's talk about Mark Reynolds over at third base. And will he hit 40 home runs?
I think he'll hit over 30, but I don't see 40 home runs.
How many wins do you think the new prospect Chen will get?
I'm gonna say over 10, between 10 and 15 at some point. I'll go 12.
Brian Roberts, is he traded at the deadline?
Yeah, I think he is traded at the deadline. You mentioned the Padres of interest. Ultimately, that's about whether they're a contender or not. But there's some teams around the MLB that you can look at and say a second baseman's a nice piece to add. And even in some cases, maybe just for the rest of the year, a bench guy is a nice piece to add. Brian Roberts has been a solid second baseman, and the chance to go to a contender would be a nice thing for his career. We'll have to see.
30 home runs for J.J. Hardy.
No, I'll go with like 26, 27. He's a really solid shortstop, one of the most underrated in the game, and the power part I really like about him, but not 30.
Will the Baltimore Orioles get above 69 wins, no sexual pun intended?
No, I don't think they will, honestly. It's not that their team is that bad. I mean, we talked about it. The lineup's getting a lot better over the next few years. Hopefully they can get good enough in time to have guys like Adam Jones play and when they're successful in his prime, and keep Nick Markakis and J.J. Hardy. We'll have to see. Ultimately, we're going to talk about record now, and then we're done. Ultimately, with this team, the division is just too good. You talk about the Blue Jays, the Rays. I'm not trying to put them in the same class. The Blue Jays are a better team overall, I still think, than the Rays. I can see them winning above 80, 85, between 80 and 85 games. Then you have the Rays, who made the playoffs last year, and with a young team, only look to get better. Andrew Friedman, I think, is the best GM in baseball. They re-added Carlos Pena. Then you have the Yankees, who added Michael Pineda this offseason. And the Red Sox, who for most of last season had the best record in baseball. And you would have to think that they're going to be right in the thick of things this year, too. So I see the Orioles at about 68, 69 wins, right in that area again. Justin, what do you think?
I'm going to agree with you. I mean, this team has so much talent. Reinbold, Jones, Markakis, Roberts, Hardy.
And then you look at the pitching, though.
Yeah, when the pitching really brings them down. So I'm agreeing with you, Tim, on this one. I mean, Buck Showalter, this team last year, we had like a lot of like hype around. Oh, this team is going to be like third place. The Rays are going to have it down here. It was the complete opposite. Baltimore was left off of what we had 2 years prior to, a year prior to last year. I mean, this team, I think they're just destined to be 69 to maybe 68 wins.
Yeah, and ultimately, the day that they finally can get some solid young pitchers in there, they have a beautiful ballpark. I'm still trying to get down to Camden. I've never been down there. I've seen it, but I've been like right around it, but I've never actually been in the stadium. And rebranding hopefully works out for them, and they aren't at home eating Cocoa Krispies or whatever cereal that bird comes with. I'm Tim. He's Justin. Day 5. Representing the Priests of America, the San Diego Padres. If you don't understand that, it's because you haven't watched this show for long enough. We keep it entertaining here. Let's just say that. Hit me up on Twitter, at CashKelly_TRST. Justin, what's your Twitter?
OTHS interviews, man.
Hit that up. #deuces.